We have Miss Erin Schachter. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. She is from Canada. She's with the Leading Partnership and is the National Director of Development at the Learning Partnership, a Canadian-wide organization that seeks to inspire and equip today's students and become tomorrow's problem solvers and change makers. She is a certified elementary school teacher with diverse experience in non-for-profit sector. She's passionate about delivering innovative programs with measurable impacts.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Gianna, and for those amazing questions you just posed to Daniel after a great presentation. It was really inspiring to hear some of the hands-on work that's going in other necks of the woods. I'm curious, can I share my screen? I think I can. Yes. Awesome. I'm going to do that. Cool. So, hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I have to say it's really humbling to be able to speak on behalf of the Learning Partnership at the second ever Global Innovation Field Trip. It's very cool to be part of this. So my name's Erin Schachter. You were really close, Gianna. And I'm the National Director of Development at TLP, which is how we call ourselves sometimes. The Learning Partnership is a charitable organization in Canada, and our head office is located in Toronto, Ontario, which is where I live. In Canada, we have a tradition of honoring the original caretakers of our land. And before I dive into some of the exciting things that have transpired in the recent weeks, I wanted to take a moment to recognize that Toronto is located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And TLP's work spans coast to Canadian coast on traditional territories of even more nations and Indigenous peoples, both recorded and unrecorded. We recognize the presence and the endurance of all Indigenous people, and we are grateful for the opportunity to work together to provide and create inclusive innovation experiences to ensure that our land is well kept and peaceful for all. Today, I'm really pleased to share with you a little bit of background about who we are and what we do at TLP. And I'm going to dive in specifically to a recent experience, shifting our culminating events to a virtual model, which sounds like a bit of jargon that I hope makes more sense in 20 minutes, with an emphasis on how we engaged volunteers remotely. And I'll share some about our experience of launching this new model, as well as highlighting some of the takeaways. So about the Learning Partnership. As I mentioned, we're a national Canadian organization that seeks to inspire and equip today's students to become tomorrow's problem solvers and change makers. Great. I'm sorry. Great. Our problems are designed to reflect provincial curriculum to support teachers in using experiential, hands-on learning to achieve the ministry-prescribed learning goals. In other words, we train teachers to deliver our programs in their classrooms as part of their core teaching. As you can imagine, like everywhere around the world, COVID-19 had an incredible impact on our programming, as schools across Canada were interrupted and education moved virtual overnight. But thanks to the unwavering understanding and support of our partners, as well as some great ingenuity across our team, we were able to implement what we called Operation Pivot, which was a 100-day plan focused on delivering on our vision and mission in a proactive, nimble, and timely manner, despite not having direct access to public school classrooms. To do this, as you can imagine, required innovation, creativity, and critical thinking, which is just some of the skills we seek to inspire in the work that we deliver. Specifically, we cultivate these skills through 3 of our key programs that I'm going to speak about today. There are others, and they're all as awesome. But the 3 I'm going to speak to are Entrepreneurial Adventure, Coding Quest, and iCubed, or Investigate, Invent, Innovate. In Entrepreneurial Adventure, classes are paired with business mentors who help students and their teachers launch a real business venture. A key component of this program is that students identify a charity that they're inspired by and donate their venture profits to this cause at the end of the year. Can you believe over the years we have donated over $3 million to different charities around the world? Code & Quest is a program in which students create an interactive video game using block-based coding to showcase their learnings on a subject that they've studied. This is a program that is coding to learn, not necessarily just learning to code. In iCube, students identify a problem that piques their curiosity and they design a solution to solve it, including planning a prototype and in some cases, building that prototype. While at face value, each of these programs is really distinct, they have fundamental similarities. One of these similarities is that each applies a form of the engineering design process. They begin with asking a question or identifying a problem and seeking to understand how others have approached it. Imagining solutions. What are some of the opportunities to solve this problem? Might come in the form of brainstorming. Planning by drawing a diagram, making a list of materials, putting a list of steps into place. Then creating by following your plan and making something come to life and putting that to test. And then of course, the iterative part, which is improving, identifying what worked, what doesn't work, and where's there opportunity to change that, improve that. Another similarity across these three programs is that they each integrate the global competencies, which are sometimes called soft skills, 21st century skills. At TLP, we embrace the definition from education thought leader Michael Fullan in Canada, who defines these specifically as 6 C's: creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, citizenship, communication, collaboration, critical thinking and problem solving, character, and self-directed learning. These are the skills that educators teach and that employers seek. They inspire deeper learning, they equip students to solve real-world problems, and they prepare them for their ever-changing future. Another similarity across these three programs is that each has a culminating event at the end of the year. Traditionally, these are in-person showcases in which students showcase their learnings and their projects among community members, including peers and teachers, and in some cases, even members of the public or volunteers and mentors. So why culminating events? Well, this year we really focused in and honed in on 2 key priorities. The first is an opportunity to celebrate student projects and to provide them with feedback. This is an opportunity for students to actually share their work and interact with people who can give them advice on what's gone great, maybe opportunities for improvements, and engage in their work directly. So in EA, this is sharing a business venture, in Code & Quest, playing a game, and in iCube, a prototype or a plan for a prototype. Another significant priority when we look at our culminating events is the opportunity to measure success of our program's goals, which is in cultivating the 6 C's. So obviously we weren't able to meet in person this year due to the COVID-19 realities, and leaning into the priorities and objectives we had identified in Operation Pivot, we knew it was time to put innovation to work. While the natural evolution of these programs would have been some virtual face-to-face real-time interaction between students and mentors or audience, given the scope of our reach across Canada and the reality that we engage with so many different school boards who have so many different policies, we identified that this was far too complex a challenge to solve in the time that we had. So instead, we went back to basics. We decided that the key was doing anything at all, and we came up with a static model. We recognized that there were fundamentally 2 groups of stakeholders that we needed to engage. Of course, the first was students. There wouldn't be culminating events without student projects. But the second really important audience were our volunteers, recognizing that historically when we do culminating events in public spaces and seek to have these passerbys engage with work, that's where there's real excitement and meaning for our student inventors or entrepreneurs or coders. And also to turn our attention to their role in how we measure impact. So I'm going to talk a bit about how we achieve the second goal. Really smart colleagues of mine last year developed a tool called the Success Rubric. This rubric was piloted and designed specifically to measure how specific skills or global competencies were demonstrated by our student participants. In the in-person model, this meant that volunteers were trained in using this survey device, and then they were taught also some guiding questions to engage the students in conversation to learn more about their processes. The volunteers would then provide the students some feedback in real time, and at the same time, they would measure the impact or the visibility of these competencies according to their conversations with students. It's really important to highlight that this assessment tool is for our use at TLP. This assessment does not go to the teachers and it does not go to those students. This is really an opportunity for us to understand whether the learning outcomes that we seek to cultivate were evident and opportunities to improve our programming in order to even improve on those learning outcomes. But the students do get that feedback, which we've heard is really, really useful. So step one was reaching out to our network of supporters. And within 2 weeks, we had 51 volunteers sign up for a virtual training session. Admittedly, between us, we didn't entirely know what that was going to look like. At the same time, we also needed to establish how students' work could be showcased. Given in-person discussion or trifold board presentations were not going to be an option. We recognized that it was essential that this invitation was inclusive, recognizing that some of our students hadn't necessarily reached the end of the program by the time that we were inviting them. And we wanted to ensure that everybody knew that they were welcome to participate. Come with what you got, come how you are, whether you're just in the middle, just at the start, we wanted to hear from you and we wanted to celebrate your work. So our invitation to teachers really emphasized that this was an opportunity to celebrate whatever they had done, no matter how far along they were in their processes. And we also really wanted to be sure that teachers weren't overburdened by the request to participate, recognizing that this was a particularly busy year for teachers across Canada as around the world. This was meant to be a solution and an opportunity to continue engagement of their students in these hands-on experiential programs. Recognizing our desire to really take the emphasis off of a perfect or even final product at all, we actually designed a template for how these students' work could be submitted using the guiding questions that volunteers had actually used in conversation with students at events. So instead of asking students to show us their final project, we asked them to show us their process. And the guiding questions that we provided were, where did you get the specific idea for your project? And specifically, what was the inquiry question or problem statement? And why did you think this was an important problem to solve? How did you make it work? What were 5 key steps you took to put your plan into action? And how did your team, if you worked with one, divide roles and responsibilities? We wanted to know, did you encounter any problems, and ask them to provide a specific example of a challenge that they overcame and the steps they took to overcome that challenge. And then we asked them to demonstrate in some way a final product or a key takeaway using pictures, links, words, and or videos. And I just want to emphasize, we told them use pictures, links, words, pictures, whatever it was, everywhere in this, it was up to them to choose their own adventure. And in the case of EA and IQ, Entrepreneurial Adventure, we asked them, how would you market and sell your item, since this would have been an early phase in their process. What was really interesting is that most of the projects we received literally followed this template, but some looked quite a bit different. And it was really important in training our volunteers that we illuminated these realities in this context. Of course, it was really vital that our success rubric also was adapted to model these current changes. So this year, what we did is we just decided to focus our attention specifically on 4 global competencies that we thought might be evident in some way, shape, or form in the presentations that we would receive. One of these was character and self-directed learning. The other around creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Asking, did the students do what they said they intended to do? Critical thinking and problem solving, applying clear steps to solve a problem, following a plan, overcoming challenges in a process, and this was a bit of a flyer given how lenient we were on our expectations, the communication question. For each competency, and it's really important, I think, to also note that we redesigned this rubric so it was virtual using good old SurveyMonkey. And under each competency, we had some prompting questions so that our volunteers knew what to ask themselves as they were seeking to assess or grade sort of how these competencies appeared in the student work. And for each competency, we asked them to measure on a 3-point scale, whether it was developing, starting to emerge, proficient, adequately there, all details were included, or exemplary, that they were above and beyond. And then there's the final component of our historic model that we sought to I'm going to illuminate one more time. This is not to go to the students. This is strictly for TLP's learning and for us to inform the evolutions of our programs going forward. But then there is that piece that the students do take, which is the feedback piece. And this was really, really important because knowing that these students were not engaging with these volunteers in real time, and frankly, in some cases, there weren't even names and definitely no faces involved. How would they know and benefit from this engagement? So we designed what we called a 3+1 model for feedback. And we asked each volunteer to provide feedback that highlighted a specific aspect of the project that was awesome, provide a specific opportunity for improvement or strengthening. And we really encouraged them in those two components to use the 6 C's language that we had gone through. And the third, and I think most exciting component of this model was seeking for them to illuminate one way in which something they observed in the student work could be applied to the world of work. So as you can see on the screen, these are 2 examples from 2 different projects of some of the great valuable feedback that we received. And then the +1 was some sort of celebratory comment. Leave it off on that high note, like great job, as you can see there. So lots of have a great summer. And that was that. So just to go over, we recruited our volunteers, we outreached to our teachers and gave them this template and saw all these student projects come in. We did these virtual training sessions for our volunteers, providing background and some technical information, including some overview about global competencies that we seek to cultivate in our work. On the next day, each volunteer received a full guide recapping this training, a link to an online version of the success rubric, and attachments for projects. And each volunteer saw about 5 to 6 student projects. For each project, each volunteer was asked to review the entire project before they even opened the rubric. Engage in the work, we told them. Go play the game if there's a link to one. Have fun. Now, here's the thing. This wasn't a perfect solution. And we actually knew this out the gates. And as part of our process, what we thought was really essential is how can we use this group of volunteers to learn how to make this better for the future? So one thing to highlight, first of all, is that our student data and all the assessment tools and that sort of stuff isn't available yet. That's currently under review, and you can stay tuned. Our impact reports will be posted on our website later this summer, early in the fall. Exciting stuff. But we actually had a unique opportunity this year, given how it all unfolded, to assess the efficacy of this assessment tool in measuring global competencies. Because so many volunteers were able to review each student project, we're going to be able to see the consistency of those ratings across the student work, which there might be some cool learnings from, and I think is kind of cool and meta. And in the spirit of innovation, as I mentioned, we were really looking for opportunities to iterate this process moving forward. One that we identified right out the gates is that there needs to be a way to engage in live time or real time mentors and students. And we're really in process of figuring out how to make that work despite the complexity of the challenges we face. Another place we saw an opportunity for improvement or a problem that we had to solve was that in our outreach to volunteers, we may have neglected to recruit French-speaking volunteers, despite the reality that we do have French students using our programs across Canada. And to our delight, we saw a great input and submissions from those French students. So the way we problem solved that actually was that among the volunteers who came to our training, we asked who spoke French, and lucky for us, we were able to identify sufficient bilingual speakers to cover that work. And so some key takeaways or highlights. First, I'm gonna start with stats. One stat that I get particularly giddy about is that out of the 51 registered volunteers who came to training sessions, 46 completed this whole process. And I think that is awesome. I also want to note that for each student project, they received feedback from minimum 4 volunteers. And universally across the board, there was abundant gratitude from the teachers and the students who saw this feedback and thought that it added value. I also want to highlight that according to our post-event survey to our volunteers, 45% of these volunteers didn't even know about TLP before they came on to participate. And despite the imperfections, 88% said that they would rate their overall experience in this virtual culminating event as above average or exceptional. 90% of them said they'd come back, and 100% said they'd refer a friend to participate next time. So here's the key takeaways that I draw from it, and I'm sure there are many others. 1, right now, there is an exceptional spirit of innovation. Most of the feedback that we heard from teachers and from volunteers was applauding the trying of this, just taking a step forward and figuring out something to do, and demonstrating resilience from the students submitting their projects and quite last minute to TLP stepping in and trying to find a way to connect people. There was so much celebration of the fact that we tried to problem solve and we invented some solution. I thought that was cool. Another really important takeaway is realizing that virtual doesn't mean far away. In fact, in some ways, as we're seeing on GIFT, I think, using virtual solutions makes the world and totally makes Canada a more connected and smaller place. We were able to see when we reached out to our network that there was incredible appetite for virtual opportunities for employees to volunteer and a universal willingness to jump in and join us in this innovative, messy, iterative process. We saw a lot of collaboration, and we saw collaboration that actually pushed boundaries that would have been in place if we were dependent on in-person events and models. So looking ahead, while so much is still unknown about what school's going to look like in the fall or into next year, or who knows for how long, or what the world is going to look like, this little experiment has made it mighty clear that innovation and iteration is going to help us navigate ways forward, and that the global competencies like collaboration, creativity, critical thinking are all key to unlocking our potential. So that's what I wanted to share today. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you for that presentation. It just blows my mind how many statistics and different modules that you presented and what you're doing with your company for all students and young innovators. I just find that really awesome what you're doing.
Thanks, Gianna. And it's young folks like you who absolutely inspire and energize us to keep doing the work we do.
Thank you. I did not have any questions. It's just everything. You provided so much information that I don't even have anything that I can ask. I wasn't sure.
I'll ask a few things. Erin, what I see the biggest benefit besides the kids getting this is what you have prepared for other agencies. Sorry, it's already out there. They're probably going to grab onto this and try to use some of your ideas. And I know as educators, that's what we do, right?
That's right.
We share. We don't ask permission, we usually ask forgiveness. But I see just the idea of feedback and the whole idea of getting the volunteers in on the very beginning. It really is going to be something great for other organizations to do. You know, the best form of the best form of flattery is taking your ideas from you. So I love what you've done, and I love that other kids will benefit outside of your organization because you've created such a great template. I also love that you are a data nerd. I mean, I'm assuming you are.
Totally. I mean, we really hang our hat on evidence-based, user-led design. And so data is the best way for us to really understand what we're doing and how we can be better at doing what we aspire to do in our mission and vision. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I actually would love to highlight partnerships in our name. And for us, partnership is really about working together and collaboration. So I would really highly encourage folks who are curious to reach out. I did have a slide with my details on it. My name's got lots of CHs, but I'll make sure that you can find me via the GIFT network. I'd be very happy to share all of our resources. And I mean, I think that if nothing else, we could benefit from each other's data and seek to make this even stronger as a unit. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, Erin, I know in the beginning you mentioned that you're a Canadian charity, and we call that a nonprofit here in the United States. And I hate to mention money, but how are you supporting yourself?
That's a great question. And in fact, that's a really key inspiration to volunteer engagement. A significant component of how we support ourselves is through partnership with corporations. And so in fact, the relationship building with these volunteers, the fact that we met 45% of our participants who didn't even know who we were, means that we have new champions for TLP. And that's really exciting. Of course, we also have a lot of gratitude to some government agencies who give us funding, as well as some individuals who are very generous in supporting our work, as well as some private and family foundations. And as always, we are looking to work together to achieve our impact and help young people thrive. So reach out if you want to talk about how we can do that too. Thanks, Jake.
Well, I just want to again thank you, and also, and I'm sure you will, thank Gianna for being an amazing host this last hour. If nothing else, it just gives me this moment of sitting back, like Jake said, and just appreciating so much our youth and what they are doing. So Erin, you're working hard to mentor our youth, and Gianna is working hard to say, hey, you're doing a good job, because here I am doing a great job. So Gianna, thank you so much for being part of this. We can't wait for you to come back in September, and put that on your calendar now. I'm actually going to turn over the official host duties to Julie, who is going to be the new, or actually Jake, you'll have to do that. I turned it over to you. And I'm going to step off for a couple of hours. I've done my 4 hours, and I'll be back at 9. All right, so thank you so much, and yay.
Thank you, and big congrats, Gianna. Thank you for showing us that the future is bright.